For those of you who asked for longer episodes, here's Season 2, Part 2, No Stops, All Story. Please follow me as I tell you about 2011 here on mine, Missing, Murdered, Unidentified in New England. July 1st, 2011. 38-year-old Marquita Lene Jones is an endangered missing person. She has been missing since she was 28. Marquita is a black female with brown hair and brown eyes, is between 5 feet and 5 feet 2 inches, and was last seen between 100 and 110 pounds. Marquita goes by the nicknames Love and Keita Love. Marquita also goes by the names Kaya and Keisha. Marquita has a scar above her left eye that spans down to her chin and a scar on her right wrist. Marquita has a history of drug use. However, it is uncertain if drugs are involved in Marquita's disappearance. Marquita was last seen in mid-2011 on or near the West Street area of the Hill neighborhood in New Haven, Connecticut, a dangerous area of the city, according to the sources, and may be in the Hill neighborhood of New Haven now. There was a rumor that Marquita left Connecticut to get out of trouble with probation. However, there is no evidence to prove this claim to be true. Please call 1-203-946-6304 with any information. July 3rd, 2011. Raul Ernesto Vera, resident of 75 King Street, Springfield, Mass., was a 38-year-old self-employed barber who enjoyed football, was a father of 4, brother to 7, grandfather, uncle, and father figure to his girlfriend's children. Raul's girlfriend referred to him as mi bonbon de chocolat. Raul was a kind-hearted man with a sense of humor. Our brother had a heart of gold, said Selena Saez, 41, of her little brother. He would give you the shirt off his back without thinking. If he had $1, you would have 50 cents of it. Raul's sister said Raul lost his way after their mother, Ada Marie Vera, died 10 years prior. Ada had been an activist in the Latino community. Ada was also Raul's guide in life. Once Ada passed, Raul claimed he had nothing to live for. Nicknamed Baby, Raul had a lengthy criminal record with gang ties and drug charges, and had been released from prison 3 months prior to being murdered for breaking and entering. Raul was shot 3 times, struck in the neck once on the evening of July 3rd, 2011 at roughly 7:15 p.m. at 66 Lincoln Street, Springfield, Mass., in the McKnight neighborhood. Witnesses thought the gunshots were M80 fireworks due to holiday weekend festivities. No other information is available. Please call 1-413-787-6355 with any information. July 4th, 2011. Victor Gomes was born on March 13th, 1978. He was a 33-year-old father of 2. One 14-year-old and one 18-year-old. Victor was a hard worker who was employed at Stop and Shop for nearly 20 years. Victor emigrated to the U.S. from Portugal at age 14 and ended up being a resident of Randolph, Mass. Victor was a Madison Park High School grad and attended 2 years of college. Victor was into motorcycles and soccer, was athletic and flirtatious. Victor's mom, Jesuina Diogo, was stoic when Victor was buried. He was her second son taken from Earth in less than 1 year. Victor was there in her comfort when his brother Ricardo died in an accidental fall in London just before his 30th birthday. With Victor's death, Jesuina wasn't able to cry anymore. A tragic fact, she relayed in Portuguese. Victor had no criminal record and no ties to gang, though his life was allegedly taken in retribution by a gang from another area. Victor was slain in a triple shooting at 34 Norton Street in Dorchester, Mass, near Bowdoin Street. This shooting took steps away from Victor's grandmother's house. Please call 1-800-494-TIPS, 1-617-343-4470, or text TIPS to crime. July 4th, 17-year-old James Coakley was shot on the sidewalk in front of his house on Hollander Street on July 4th, 2011. Before dying from his injuries, James said to his dad, who had run to his side, "Daddy, I know who it was. I saw them." James died without saying anything more. In a touching tribute, hundreds of people, including teenagers, parents of teens, and people who knew or worked with James's parents, lined the streets near St. Mark's Church in Roxbury, waiting to pay their respects. This just shows how much of an impact one death has on a community. Think of how much an impact would happen if the perpetrator were caught. Please call 1-800-494-TIPS, 1-617-343-4470, or text TIPS to crime. July 5th, 2011. The partial skeletal remains of an unidentified 50 to 70-year-old female were located in Hartford County, Connecticut. No other information is available. Please call 1-860-679-3980 with any information. July 5th, 2011. Cousins LaShawn Disco Washington, aged 39, and Joey Winston, aged 26, were murdered as they were leaving an Independence Day weekend backyard barbecue at their grandmother's house in Roxbury, Massachusetts. Winston feared for his safety, drove everywhere, didn't walk, and told people his time was running out. LaShawn's mom died at the age of 4, and he was raised by his dad. LaShawn had been in jail for 5 years at the age of 17, almost 20 years prior, something that haunted him for the rest of his life. This fact affected his jobs as an adult. He would omit his history on job applications to get hired, as he had had a clean history aside from this blemish. LaShawn would work for a few weeks to a few months, and then would get fired when the truth about his criminal history came out. LaShawn's dad, Timothy Washington, said, "These kids have been written off. These kids have no other resource. Once they get that Corey, that criminal record, that's it as far as the job market is concerned. They're rejects," he said. "So what are they going to do?" They got to turn to other resources for income. And I think a lot of times they take their frustrations out on each other. Eventually, LaShawn was honest about his criminal history, landed a good security bouncing gig to support his children that came with good pay and benefits. On the evening of July 5th, LaShawn had his girlfriend and their 5-month-old daughter, one of the 4 children he had. He said goodbye to them, then watched them drive home in one car, and drove off with his cousin Joey in another vehicle. They left the family, and that's when they got shot. We don't know much else. We just know that they got shot at 11:30. One got shot in the head, and the other in the neck. As Joey and LaShawn sat in the car, another car approached at Columbia Street and killed LaShawn and Joey in an execution-style murder. Joey had been the target as he had gang ties to the local Roxbury gang, and LaShawn had been an unfortunate collateral damage of this violence. Someone ran up to the car they were sitting in, fired, and the car lurched forward into a building, crashing into it. Instead of directing their anger towards the killer, the family directed their anger towards the mayor and the city. They were angry that there were not more resources being allocated to keep people safe late at night in Roxbury and Dorchester. Timothy Washington, LaShawn's dad, tried to get a petition going to get information from law enforcement about the investigation, as law enforcement had closed communications with the family about the status and any developments within the investigation. It is unknown if the petition collected enough signatures or whether or not it was successful. LaShawn's memory is still alive, and his online memorial, as of 2021, had a member popping in, saying, "Big Cuz, where did the time go? I can still see that gap and hear that loud Aggie laugh. Lol. The family ain't been the same since y'all left, but I know you and Joe are rocking the heavens. I love you." Please call 1-800-494-TIPS, 1-617-343-4470, or text TIPS to crime. July 7th, 2011. Dominic T. Gurrier had 3 sisters, was a Dorchester native, and was starting a business with his dad, buying and selling auctioned-off cars. Though Dominic was known to authorities, his father, Yvonne, said that Dominic was staying out of trouble and that he didn't have current troubles with anybody. On Thursday night, July 7th, 2011, someone murdered Dominic at the corners of Mountain and Mascot Streets in Dorchester, Mass. Like many of these cases, no other information is available. Please call 1-800-494-TIPS or 1-617-343-4470 with any information. July 12th, 2011. Doris Dolly Roma Forney Alzik had a unique ability to bring joy where it previously did not exist. A lifelong Springfield, Massachusetts resident, residing at 100 Phillips Avenue, 81-year-old Dolly was full of life. Born on September 27th, 1929, someone murdered Dolly on July 12th, 2011. The garden surrounding Dolly's home was what Dolly took pride in her sunset years. These same flowers overgrew and became neglected after Dolly's murder. Prior to her lovely home and garden, Dolly worked for 47 years at GNC Merriam-Webster Publishing Company and would occasionally visit coworkers after her retirement. Dolly was a reader and enjoyed football. Dolly had a great sense of humor, a big heart, and was kind. The way that Dolly died was unusual, and there are differing stories as to how she was discovered. One such story is when Evelyn Pedraza tried knocking on the door and waking Dolly up, but to no avail. Evelyn, Dolly's best friend of 19 years, was the one to call 911 after discovering Dolly sitting in a chair, partially burned, reading her Bible. Another version of this tale is that sanitation workers saw a fire at Dolly's home and called authorities. Yet another version is that a delivery person noticed the smoke and fire and had to break down the door to get to the blaze. Regardless, the fire took place at 3 p.m. and caused $60,000 worth of damage to the property, along with claiming Dolly's life. There was no evidence that the home was broken into prior to the fire. Evelyn lived across the street from Dolly, and they would talk of many things, mainly gardening and showing their affections. Dolly was an animal lover, had 4 cats, and fed the outside critters. Dolly was survived by her sister, cousins, and friends. Dolly's death is considered a homicide, though the actual cause of death has never been released. If you know who set fire, please call 1-800-682-9229 for a $5,000 reward as reporting arson as part of the Arson Watch program. And if you know who murdered Dolly, please call 1-413-787-6355. July 15th, 2011. The unidentified partial skeletal remains of an adult Pre-60-year-old male, thought to be between ages of 40 to 50, of unknown height, weight, or ethnicity, were discovered in Hartford County, Connecticut. The estimated year of death was 2011. No comparisons have been made. Please call 1-860-679-3980 with any information. July 19th, 2011. Oscar Castro was 26 when an unknown person shot him in the face outside of 104 High Street in Holyoke, Mass., also known as the Clover Cafe. Oscar was likely not a patron at the Clover Cafe when shot, as it was 1:30 a.m. on July 19th, 2011. This was not the first time the Clover Cafe was caught in the midst of controversy, though I couldn't find out what other controversies entailed. Oscar was killed by a member of La Familia gang, though he was not in a gang. La Familia had it out for him, according to law enforcement. Preliminary investigation showed that Oscar may have been chased to the corner of High and Lyman when shot. After the shooting, security guards at the scene were knocked over by Oscar's supporters clamoring to get through to the ambulance doors to Oscar. Police don't think that Oscar's murder is related to the murder that occurred less than 1 day later when 3 brothers murdered Reynaldo Fuentes. Please call 1-413-322-6900 or 1-413-505-5993 if you have any information. July 31st, 2011. Richard Richie King was 22, awesome, full of energy, loving, caring, and a cheerleader with no known gang ties. Rich worked 2 jobs, one with his uncle cleaning houses, and the other as the night manager of the subway near Rich's death scene. Even people who encountered him at his job at Subway thought highly of Rich, saying in an online memorial, "I don't know Richard personally, but I had many interactions with him at his job, and he was the sweetest and most professional person at work. I was impressed with his confidence and the way he treated the customers and coworkers. I saw his pic online, and I prayed it wasn't the same person. It was. I'm so sad. Sorry for your loss." Someone stabbed Rich repeatedly, somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m., and Rich was discovered at 4:40 a.m. at 25 Trotter Court near Lenox and Camden Streets, housing development in Lower Roxbury, which is in the south end of Boston. Rich was found in a pool of blood with his head facing a parking lot. Authorities say that Rich's murder was for more than just a robbery and was likely targeted. Earlier in the evening of July 31st, 2011, Rich and his cousin were drinking at a club in the Theater District, and after leaving and walking together for a few blocks, parted ways. Rich going one way on foot towards Trotter Court, his cousin, the other, catching a cab towards Dorchester. There were more people at night than normal. The night of his murder, Rich had asked his mom to wake him up in order to go to work on time. Though when Melinda, his mom, went to wake him up, he wasn't there. Rich's mom, Melinda Tharps, was at work at St. Elizabeth's Hospital when she got the call about Rich's untimely death. Rich had been deceased for hours by the time Melinda was contacted. Melinda and Rich had a special relationship, a strong relationship, full of mutual love and respect. Rich was Melinda's cheerleader and motivator, and Rich told his mom how much he loved and admired her and looked up to her, as she had had 2 jobs as a single mom of 4 children, going to school to make the best life for herself and for her children. According to a YouTube comment, Rich was a father at the time of his slaying. Rich's tragic story was broadcast as an unsolved case 3 and 5 years after his murder. Melinda says that she forgives Rich's killer, but that she still wants justice. It has been said that there are witnesses out there who are likely afraid to come forward. It has been over a decade, so if you know, or you are Rich's killer, please come forward at 1-800-494-8477. July 31st, 2011. Wilson Alexander Jr. was shot along with 3 other individuals at 40 Ames Street in Dorchester, Massachusetts on July 31st, 2011. One of the men was found at the scene, 2 were found nearby on Talbot Avenue, and the 4th victim was found 1.5 miles away, inside a vehicle in the Grove Hall section of Roxbury. At 12:20 a.m., these 4 people in their late teens to early 20s were shot at. They were struck and all fled, but Wilson, as his injuries were too significant. There had been 2 killings and 1 survivor with the weapon used in Wilson's murder. On June 27, 2011, a 4-year-old was shot in the back as an innocent bystander and survived. And on July 31, 2011, Wilson Alexander Jr., visiting Franklin Field at Harambe Field after a funeral, was attacked by a rival gang. And lastly, on October 3, 2011, 23-year-old Paula Jacobs, who will be featured in depth in October's episode, was murdered at 39 Dearborn Street. Please call 1-800-494-8477 with any information. There is a $1,000 reward. August 1st, 2011. Boston police discovered a 70 to 75-year-old white female in her underwear deceased at her residence on August 1st, 2011. The decedent had 3 to 3.5 inch long white hair and an unknown eye color due to decomposition and putrefaction. Only one comparison has been made, and that was to Virginia Douglas, who was last contacted in 1988 and missing from Middlesex, Mass. No other information is available. Please call 1-800-494-TIPS with any information. August 6th, 2011. Rakita Smalls was born on April 15th, 1989, was 22, known for her smile and work ethic as a Stop and Shop employee in Westport, Connecticut, and was a 2007 basic high school graduate. Iroquois, aka Iraq, was a West Hill High School grad, a father to a daughter named Dynasty, and an uncle to at least one nephew, and was only home for a few short months from an 8-year stint in prison for robbery, when he and friend Rakita Smalls were senselessly murdered. Iraq and Rakita, both Bridgeport, Connecticut residents, were sitting in Iraq's black Honda sedan on Avenue B in Norwalk, Connecticut, when they were gunned down on August 6, 2011. The car was faced away from the curb and looked like the driver was either pulling away or parallel parking with the passenger side window was shot out. A neighbor looked outside with binoculars to determine what had happened and discovered Rakita with a gunshot wound to the head. Avenue B residents reported a black woman slumped over in the front seat of a black car with a broken window, unresponsive, shortly before 8 a.m. Original analysis couldn't determine if this tragedy was a murder-suicide or a double homicide, and thankfully it was eventually determined to be a double homicide. Lead detective Christopher Imparato said he wouldn't be surprised if there were people not on the police department's radar that possess vital information. And if people do have a fear of coming forward, a fear of retaliation, it's completely understandable. It's something they've run into numerous times during the investigation. But reassure, their identity and their safety is paramount to us. That comes first and foremost, Imperato said. The inner circle of friends allegedly know who the killer is, yet they remain tight-lipped. I am the mother of a murdered child, said Natasha Smalls. Her name was Rakita Smalls. She wasn't just a girl found dead in a car. She's my daughter. I'm asking anyone who has information to please come forward. Winter Alston, Iraq's sister, identified her brother's belongings in the evening he and Rakita were killed. When Iraq was killed, his daughter was taken from dance class and held in suspense as to why, until her begging and pleading led to her being told that her dad was killed. According to law enforcement, there is an unnamed person of interest in the case. There was at one point a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for these senseless murders. Some outlets have expressed that law enforcement has been less than diligent in their solving of this case. However, anyone with information about the killings can call Imperato at 1-203-854-3190, the Norwalk Police Detective Bureau Information Line at 1-203-854-3011, or the anonymous Norwalk Police Tip Line at 1-203-854-3111. August 7th, 2011. I remember in 8th grade when I was the new kid, you were the first person to talk to me and crack jokes so that I would feel comfortable. R.I.P. Elvis, and your mom too. That is just one of the many heartfelt messages left on the online memorial for Elvis Sanchez, aka Elvis Castro, and his mother Elvira Pimentel. 17-year-old Elvis appeared in court where the Commonwealth wanted him to testify against those who killed Wilfredo Martinez on June 5th, 2011. Info Elvis likely had and likely refused to share with authorities. It is unknown if Elvis testified in front of the grand jury. Elvis was at one point suspected of Wilfredo's murder. He was detained and his home searched. And yet it was Elvis's upstairs neighbor, 17-year-old Laquan Miller, who was subsequently arrested for Wilfredo's murder. The only record that Elvis had was for a 2010 gun possession charge, though his association with the, quote, group tied to Archdale Road in Roslindale, who are described as a gang, one that Laquan and Wilfredo were also part of, may have attributed to his and his mother's murders. The murder of Wilfredo took place outside of an apartment complex where he and his friend Kareem Dowling, who survived being shot in the back twice and once in the arm, were hanging out. Earlier in the evening, there was a party at the apartment where Elvis, his brother, their mom, and her boyfriend lived. According to private comments, 2 men were seen loitering around the apartment building, and when they realized that the party had ended and the guests had left the place, they fired shots at the Pimentel Sanchez family and their friend. Elvis, Elvira, and her 34-year-old boyfriend were shot in the cream-colored building at 3964 Washington Street, second floor apartment, at 3:45 a.m. on August 7th, 2011. The trio were riddled with bullets. Only the unknown boyfriend survived. Elvis's brother wasn't home at the time of the shooting. Neighbors revealed? Nothing. Elvis's family were normal people who didn't cause any problems. More protection is needed for witnesses, as people are scared to come forward because they are or they feel to be threatened. The current program offers to get specified witnesses and their relatives out to another part of Massachusetts for several months. But that's only if the police deem the information worthy, which even just going to the police can be dangerous for some people. Several days after the murders, a marked cruiser was stationed outside of one of Elvis's relatives' homes. Elvis and Elvira are buried in the cemetery in the northern area of Peravia, in the capital city of Bani, in the Dominican Republic. The pair were featured on a Massachusetts cold case playing card. If you have any information, please call 1-800-494-TIPS. August 10th, 2011. 26-year-old Anthony Stone was a 2003 Montclair High School graduate. Anthony was discovered with a gunshot wound to the abdomen as well as to the head in the early hours of August 10th, 2011 at 372 Broadway in Providence, Rhode Island. Prior to running out into the street, Anthony had been inside his home where he was bound and shot. When Anthony was found, he still had the plastic handcuffs attached to one of his wrists. Anthony had a history of selling cocaine and had been arrested for this crime a few months before his slaying. If you have any information, please call 1-401-444-1216. August 10th, 2011. Ronnie Alante was 25 and lived in either Providence or Pawtucket, Rhode Island. A Lincoln Woods State Park ranger found Ronnie's car outside of Twin River Road, parked in a driveway 200 yards from the Lincoln Woods State Park, parked for hours with the wipers on. Ronnie was discovered hands bound behind his back, shot several times in the face, in the trunk of the car he was borrowing. Ronnie's family thinks that he was likely murdered over missing drug money, that he was blamed by an acquaintance, as he didn't participate in gang activity on his own. It is unknown if the murder weapon was recovered. Earlier in the evening, Ronnie had attended a house party in Providence. If you have any information, please call 1-401-333-1111. August 22nd, 2011. It was 2:18 a.m. when two state troopers from Boston heard gunshots. Robert, Bobby Bunctious McDaniel, was a 24-year-old returning from a night cruise on Viking's Starliner when someone shot and killed him on the Seaport District Dock at 290 Northern Ave near the Bank of America Pavilion. Bobby may have been killed due to an earlier altercation on board. Bobby was transported to Tufts Medical Center where he was pronounced deceased. The boat Bobby was on prior to his murder held 348 passengers, and it is unknown how many were on board that night. The cruise that evening was Hitmaker's Coke Boy, boat cruise hosted by Lou Armstrong and French Montana. Ladies were 18 plus, men were 21 plus. It seems very predatory, to be honest. Everybody knows the police lie, Darlene McDaniel said in a phone interview, declining to say where she lives now. Everybody knows my children weren't gang members. Darlene is referring to the claim that Kendall Street Thugs, or Kendall Street Team, or just KST for short, referred to themselves as a gang, but they didn't actually act like a gang, according to Darlene. According to law enforcement, though, KST were a violent street gang operating Framingham, Mass. in the early 2000s who have been accused of a disproportionate share of drug trafficking, guns, money, sexual assault, battery, and general gang violence. Bobby lived up to the KST requirements as he was charged with assault and battery with a dangerous weapon after choking out a former girlfriend until she passed out during an argument, stabbing her in the thigh with a pen, and punching her. The case was dropped when the girlfriend couldn't cooperate with prosecutors. 2 other assault cases were dismissed due to lack of cooperation. Only a driving with a suspended license, which Bobby was due in court for the Thursday following his murder, and having faulty brake lights were the charges to stick to him.
Others said of Bobby that he was a warm, caring individual who had a good family and many friends, and that he was a real good person. If you needed him to be there, he was there. Though KST are described by others as a bunch of kids, nothing serious, who wore matching t-shirts to the 2003 Boston Marathon that said, KST ain't no joke, and featured a gun firing bullets. KST typically go to intimidate people in groups of 8 to 10, don't cooperate with police even when they are the victims, fight amongst themselves and elsewhere, and have been known to murder their own. Bobby was 18 when he was shot the first time in 2005 as he walked down 2nd Street in Framingham. And unfortunately, Bobby wasn't Darlene's only son lost to gun violence. Another son, Joey, or Joe Bucks as he was referred to, was 19 when Eric Murray killed him over a girl. Joey was best friends forever to rapper Problem Child. At the shrine built for Joey, someone wrote, "Stop snitchin'." Eric Murray's sentence was overturned as self-defense evidence wasn't turned over to the defense. Darlene made it known that Bobby had gotten into some trouble and was distancing himself from KST when he was murdered. Mike Smith, featured in October 2011's episode, was shot in the same complex. Please call 1-617-343-4470 or 1-800-494-TIPS with any information.
August 22nd, 2011. Tyrus Sanders was a 28-year-old rapper, Quincy, Massachusetts resident, and basketball lover. Tyrus attended Dean College in Franklin, Mass., was part of a rap group called Live City, and worked at Hyatt Harborside at Logan International Airport before being laid off. Tyrus had a history with police, as in 2004 he was charged with distribution of a Class B narcotic in a school zone. Tyrus went to visit his parents in his old neighborhood in Kensington Park in Roxbury, Massachusetts on August 22, 2011. And while Tyrus was standing and chatting with friends, someone approached and opened fire shortly before 9:30 p.m. Tyrus was killed, and a bullet from the gunman went through the wall of an 11-year-old boy's room. Thankfully, that child was not in the room at the time. If you have any information, please call 1-800-494-TIPS. August 24th, 2011. Carmen Milagros Melendez, nicknamed Chi-Chi, loved to sing and act like a movie star. Carmen was born June 3rd, 1995, and had an unforgettable smile, was compassionate, and was about to become a sophomore at High School of Commerce. Carmen was in the care of the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families, and lived at a foster home in Springfield when she was killed. On the evening of August 24th, 2011, Carmen was walking through a parking lot on her way home from her friend's place in Holyoke, when at the corner of State and Andrew Street in Springfield, Mass., a stray bullet struck and killed her. The bullet came from the Mason Square section of the city. The shooting occurred at 11, and Carmen was pronounced deceased at 11:19 at Bay State Medical Center. Carmen is buried in Oak Grove Cemetery. One woman gave birth prematurely at the news of Carmen's murder, and in one online memorial, Carmen's former stepfather of 6 years left condolences, a testament to how substantial Carmen really was. Please call 1-413-787-6355 with any information. August 26th, 2011. Omar Oakes Edwards was a beloved son of Maxine and Dennis Edwards, and was the father of Cheyenne. Omar was a Mattapan resident and brother to two. Omar's bullet-ridden body was removed from the backyard of the triple-decker located at 18 Homer Street, Mattapan, Mass. At 4:10 a.m. on August 26, 2011. Please call 1-800-494-TIPS with any information. August 27th, 2011. Trigger warning: suicide and substance abuse. Marble Ace Arvidsson, nicknamed Marb and Ace, son of Sigrid, was born June 14th, 1994, and named Marble because it is a strong and whimsical, attention-getting name. Marble has one brother named Soren. At the age of 1, Sigrid moved herself and Marble away from an abusive relationship and was struggling with alcoholism. Sigrid faced her personal demons, and Marble went to live with his great-grandparents from the ages of 5 to 6, and went again to live with his mom when she gained her sobriety. If you are struggling with sobriety, there is help. Visit aa.org or al-anon.org for more information and resources. At age 14, Marble was rebellious towards his mother, had violent altercations, including taking a maul, which is a sledgehammer with a wedge on one side, to the porch and parts of the foundation, causing damage totaling over $3,000. Marble also enjoyed crafting and building things, being outdoors, and live-action role-playing, or at least fake sword fighting with friends. Marble lived in multiple foster homes and gained close relationships with both the families. Sigrid laments that she wasn't close to Marble since freshman year of high school, when he was sent to live to a foster home for the betterment of all, and then was moved to another, better-suited home 1.5 years later to address Marble's growing need for independence. Marble was in the custody of the Vermont Department of Children and Families and lived in a Families First home with one other teenage boy and 2 mentors in their 20s. The goal of this arrangement was to get the teens capable of living on their own in adulthood. Marble was placed in West Attleboro, Vermont, a town, quote, known for its hippies and left-wing politics, an open place a kid like Marble could fit right in. Marble and his mentor would go for rides down the back roads of Vermont and listen to Bob Marley and discuss the world. Marble was about to enter his senior year, was a B average student who was looking forward to college, and had interests in several, including UVM. Marble has a good sense of humor and is quick-witted and gentle. Marble also possessed a volatile temper, stayed out on occasion, wore black clothes, and honestly sounded like a typical hormonally challenged 17-year-old kid. Marble smoked weed and cigarettes. He was creative and empathetic, an incredible storyteller who understood suffering and understood laughing helps. On the day of August 27th, 2011, Marble's roommate said he saw Marble let in an unknown person in their late teens to early 20s, who was shorter than Marble, wearing a black baseball cap at about 1:15 p.m., and by 2 p.m. they left via the home's back door. Marble left a note on the door saying that he was out with the Gremlin Horde, aka his friends, and that he'd be back in 30 minutes. Marble's girlfriend showed up about an hour later, and Marble still wasn't home. He then proceeded to miss his 4 p.m. plans with his girlfriend. Marble disappeared the day before Hurricane Irene landed, dumping 7 inches of rain and causing major flooding. Hurricane Irene was a devastating storm that cost millions of dollars, close to $1 billion in damages. The home at 503 Marlborough Road, Route 9, at Sunset Lake Road and West Brattleboro, where Marble was staying, was thankfully untouched by the hurricane. But it was cut off from the town for 3 days as the Whetstone River overflowed. One source said that Marble was seen entering the woods, but not exiting. It also didn't mention the mystery man. There were no other leads, which in and of itself is odd. Days passed without word, and the fear grew. Even though Marble was in the care of DCF, he didn't have a history of running away, and there were no current signs of unhappiness. All of Marble's known acquaintances were contacted prior to reaching out to the police the following Sunday. Marble took his wallet with unknown cash value. However, his bank accounts remain untouched. Marble didn't own a cell phone, and Julie Cunningham, Marble's 11-year case manager, thinks that Marble would have reached out to people after Hurricane Irene cleared, checking in on them. There are differing theories as to what happened to Marble, including that he completed suicide, that he was abducted or harmed by the unknown man who appeared that day, who has yet to come forward, being taken away by rushing water during the hurricane. One source is quoted as saying, "Did he get high at a favorite hangout spot, slip on a rock, get washed away in a raging stream? Or did the near adult cleverly decide the upcoming storm was a golden opportunity to slip out of his hard scrabble life and quietly build a new one?" Sigrid thinks someone knows what happened to Marble, and that good, bad, right, or wrong, someone has information. Sigrid also thinks that meeting with the mystery man turned into more than Marble was prepared for, or that Marble went out hiking, slipped, and fell downstream. Or maybe he was straight up murdered. Larry Baudouin, Marble's grandfather, says that having plans with his girlfriend is enough reason to believe that he didn't disappear on his own. Marble's aunt is a woman named Sergeant Major Trish Kittredge, and she thinks that Marble is likely deceased, and there are slim chances of him being found alive. A mentor, unsure which one, said that Marble is likely deceased as he had bad judgment, was impulsive and impressionable, and that he was easily manipulated. Trish coordinated the numerous searches for Marble, as it was her specialty. Marble's mentor didn't participate in any of the searches because he didn't want to be the one to discover Marble's corpse. Known hiking areas of Marble's were searched. There were door-to-door canvases, local haunts were searched, and search dogs were utilized. The woods around Hogback Mountain were searched. These searches were funded by private donations. There was a 1-month candlelight vigil held, and a 1-day hike/ground search hybrid called Hike for a Cause. Back to the mystery man for a moment. The lack of communication from the police can't confirm or deny if they know more than they are letting on about this individual, or if they are as in the dark as the rest of us. Trish, Sigrid, and Marble's girlfriend held numerous press conferences. And over the 10 years Marble was first reported missing, investigators have re-interviewed hundreds of witnesses. Law enforcement admits that the original efforts to locate Marble were hindered due to resource strain because of the hurricane. It makes sense, unfortunately. There have been theories that Israel Keyes, murderer of the missing Vermont couple Lorraine and William Currier, was involved with Marble's disappearance. There is little evidence pointing to this as a viable scenario, though, and it's more likely someone Marble knew harmed him. Other, even more discreditable theories tie into the Bennington Triangle paranormal angle, alien abduction, and the Bennington monster. Another more credible theory is a rumor that Trish heard, where 2 young men beat Marble to death. Another rumor that spread was one that Marble's girlfriend's ex-boyfriend, whom the couple were friendly with and spent time with that summer, had killed him, as he had been put into jail for assault of a minor. The same summer that Marble's unnamed girlfriend and Marble got together was the summer that the girlfriend ended things with the violent boyfriend. One journalist named Dan Nichols took a particular interest in Marble Arvidsson's case, and his last thoughts on the matter are that he hopes that Marble chose to leave and he is just somewhere else. Marble Arvidsson is 6 foot 2 inches, 165 pounds, and is a special needs, high-functioning individual. Marble has blonde hair and blue-green eyes and is a known self-harmer with scars on his arms and body. The last time he was seen, Marble was wearing a black button-down shirt, black pants, black hiking boots, and a black Guatemalan fedora. Because Marble liked to make a statement. And no jacket. It is debated on whether or not Marble wore his hiking boots out or took them with him, but either way, his hiking boots were not located. Marble is friendly yet guarded, goofy and jovial. Marble has ties to different areas of Vermont, including Brattleboro, Dover, and Wilmington. According to one high school friend, Marble is scary smart when it came to personal relationships, and that he knows many people, but is friends with few. And the few he is friends with, he is very loyal to. So not hearing from him for all these years is beyond uncharacteristic. There was an unconfirmed sighting of Marble in the Brattleboro area in April of 2012. Marble will be 29 this year, if still alive. Dental records and DNA are available for comparison. And according to Sigrid, the best I can do as a mom is love him in whatever form he is in right now. If you are or you know where Marble Arvidsson is, please call 1-802-251-8188 or 1-802-257-7946. August 31st, 2011. Anthony Tony Worrell was into computers and liked children. Tony was a Roxbury, Massachusetts resident and had a 2006 arrest for weapons violations at the age of 23, after being pulled over in an area where shots had recently been fired. 3 others had miscellaneous weapon charges from that stop as well. On the night of August 31st, 2011, at 10:46 p.m., officers were called to the scene of Walford Way in McNulty Court Development for a report of someone shot. EMTs were there by the time police arrived. Tony was removed from the disturbingly large pool of blood from the single shot to the abdomen he suffered. Tony was transported to Mass General Hospital where he was pronounced dead. After Tony's death, his mom Cassandra met weekly with a grief counselor who specializes in grief and trauma after a homicide. Cassandra felt alone and withdrawn because people would pull away from her when she would talk about Tony's murder. Cassandra found a support group for homicide victims' families and say that they are lifelines for one another. Cassandra says that he might have taken my child, but he can't have me. Cassandra won't curl up all day and is relearning how to navigate life after her son's murder. If you or someone you know have any information, please call 1-800-494-TIPS or 1-617-343-4470. September 2nd, 2011. The unidentified skeletal remains of a white male between the ages of 18 to 99 were discovered in Rochester, Vermont, a part of Windsor County. The remains were dressed in a white dress shirt, green sweater, brown leather belt, and black pants. The body was discovered in a wooden casket with metal handles in a blue vault. The body was likely disinterred from Woodlawn Cemetery in Rochester, Vermont, due to intense flooding from Hurricane Irene. 24 bodies are still unaccounted for from that cemetery. If you have any information, please call 802-241-5000. September 8th, 2011. Trigger warning: sexual abuse of a child. John Labb was a brave 54-year-old man who took on the church. Before that, John was born on November 2nd, 1956, in West Stewartstown, New Hampshire. John attended Colebrook Academy as a child, was a Colebrook High Class of 75 graduate who went on to Plymouth State University. John was a good guy, shirt off your back if you needed it kind of person. His bluntness could catch people off guard. One friend recalls how John would often call, sometimes as early as 5:30 in the morning, to see if he and his wife wanted to join him and Becky for breakfast. Much to the friend's chagrin at such an early call, the friend described John as a great friend, a kind word for anyone. Others said that John, he had integrity. He was courageous, very simple, soft-spoken, a sweet guy, a brave man. John was married to a lovely woman named Becky Sue Wolverton Labb, had a bonus daughter named Jade, 5 sisters, 1 brother, and 2 dogs named Madison and Morgan. John loved the outdoors, making improvements to his home, landscaping, general handyman activities, was incredibly self-sufficient, and a major animal lover. John worked construction, raised chickens, and harvested firewood. John and Becky were able to enjoy this lifestyle in their home out in the woods. In May 2010, John filed a civil lawsuit against the Archdiocese of Manchester, New Hampshire, and the Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate. John was an altar boy at St. Brendan's Catholic Church. John had been subjected to molestation for 4 years at the hands of the now, thankfully dead priest Reverend George St. Jean, based out of Colebrook, New Hampshire, and shuffled elsewhere. John was only 9 when the abuse began in the 1960s. John was reassured by the St. Jean that he was doing God's work when abusing John. St. Jean abused John nearly 100 times, and it was mainly in the back seat of the vehicle his dad was driving John and the Reverend to Mass in. The abuse occurred elsewhere and turned from fondling to sodomy. John was one of 3 court cases, and one of the 20 to 70 boys that George St. Jean sexually abused. The grooming of the young boys began when St. Jean would lure the boys in with talks of stamp collecting and coin collecting. St. Jean, the pedophile priest, thankfully died in 1982. John kept his tragic secret until after his mother passed away so as to not upset her over the revelations. John's body was discovered by a friend, who ran inside to tell Becky what they found and told her to call paramedics. Becky placed a 911 call at 2:30 p.m. and John was pronounced dead at 2:50 p.m. Because the case is still ongoing, the exact date of death, as well as whether or not there was forced entry and what kind of gun was used, have been kept secret. Becky was ruled out as a suspect. She had been out and arrived home shortly before her friend, who had also been ruled out as a suspect, came to the house. No weapon was located at the scene. The murderer came prepared to kill John. The killer shot John and left the scene. Nothing was taken from the household. Police are looking for information from anyone who encountered John between Tuesday, September 6th, 2011, and Thursday, September 8th, 2011, when he was found. Neighbors didn't report anything or anyone out of the ordinary that day. There is no direct evidence leading law enforcement to think that John's death was tied to his impending lawsuit against the church. In lieu of flowers, the family had all donations go towards the New Hampshire Humane Society. John is buried in the family plot next to the church where his abuse occurred many, many years ago. Please call 1-603-223-3860 with any information on this case. September 9th, 2011. It was a cloudy day when 5 friends gathered in the state of Maine for a wedding, went frolicking. They were taking pictures of waves, exploring caves, and having a generally delightful time. Tragedy struck in the form of a large wave, striking and capturing 33-year-old Thomas Allen Clark. Hurricane Katia had gone to sea, and the waves were deceiving from where the friends were trekking, and caught them off guard. The 4 remaining friends risked life and limb to get Thomas back from the sea. They were unsuccessful in their attempts. Crews from the Maine Marine Patrol, Monhegan Island Volunteer Fire Department, and Good Samaritans aboard a kayak, dory, lobster vessel, the recreational vessel Balmy Days, and the ferry Elizabeth Ann assisted with the search. These vessels were later joined by a vessel from the Maine Marine Patrol, a 47-foot motor lifeboat from Coast Guard Station Boothbay Harbor, an MH-60 Jayhawk helicopter from the Coast Guard Air Station Cape Cod, and the 87-foot cutter Hammerhead, which had been operating in the Portsmouth area according to the United States Coast Guard. There was an initial 34-hour search followed by another 15-hour search. These searches spanned 170 and 200 square miles. The wedding went on as planned. Thomas's camera bag and shoes were recovered, however, Thomas remains missing. Thomas was son of Thomas and Mara Clark and had several siblings. Thomas was a skilled builder who often traveled between Ireland and the U.S. Time of his disappearance, Thomas was 5 foot 9 inches, white male with brown eyes and brown hair. On his upper left chest, Thomas has a fish tattoo. On his torso, he has an angel tattoo. According to a press release issued Saturday by the Coast Guard, people caught in a rip current, should remain calm and swim parallel to the shore. If you can't reach shore, float or tread water until you are out of the current, it stated. We also recommend that whenever possible, wear a life jacket while on the water and never swim alone. If you have any information on the disappearance of Thomas Clark, if you find any remains in the harbor by where he disappeared, please call 1-207-459-1300. September 22nd, 2011. Trigger warning: domestic abuse. Marklani Candelario is a 23-year-old survivor. Originally from the Dominican Republic, where she attended school, at some point in life, Marklani lived in the Bronx, New York, prior to moving to New Haven, Vermont. Looking to start anew after living through domestic abuse, Marklani and her 2 children were living in the Sugar House Motel as she built her new life. And when Marklani disappeared, she was bringing her oldest son back to his father in the Bronx. After making it to the airport, to the Bronx, and dropping off her son, Marklani was to go to the Dominican Embassy to get an issue with her passport corrected. The last person to see Marklani was the father of her child. On September 22, 2011, Marklani's backpack full of belongings was found on a bus platform in Massachusetts. When last heard from, Marklani said that she was being held against her will in New York. There was an unfounded and unconfirmed rumor going around that Marklani renounced her U.S. citizenship and returned to the Dominican Republic. Another unconfirmed and unfounded rumor was that Marklani and her 2 children were deported. Marklani suffers from mental illness and needs medication to control her condition. Marklani is a Hispanic female with brown eyes and brown hair. The circumstances of Marklani's disappearance warrant investigation by authorities. Please call 1-802-244-8781 with any information. Thank you for joining me on the second half of 2011. I look forward to showing you what 2012 has to bring. If you have any questions, concerns, complaints, please email me at minepodcast@gmail.com. All one word, and mine is spelled with 2 M's, 2 I's, 1 N, 1 E. Please include what your message is about in the subject line. Later, y'all!